Thank you to Fiona. She's just started the record button. So welcome to this this evening's webinar, and we've entitled it in a slightly tongue-in-cheek, but also some of us have experienced it, which the phrase is the boss about deer. Deer to me is my sort of like kryptonite. If someone calls me deer, it tends to cause quite a lot of anger. So yeah, that's partly why we incorporated it into the title. Nick, any thoughts on the title at this stage?
Well, I just get it when someone arrives at the door and says, "Is the boss about?" And then I turn into a Rottweiler, and yeah, I just turn, and then I don't do myself any favors. So it doesn't happen often, but it does happen, and it's always makes my blood boil.
We should also clarify this is not going to be an hour and a half of feminist rant. It is. Oh, there might be a bit of that. Who knows? But it was. I think as we sort of talked at a previous one, we were just also very conscious of a lot of the speakers that we'd had were all male, so we wanted to try something with an all-female voice. So this is why we tried this evening, and then we'll see. Again, it's just trying to get a range of people represented on this sort of call, really. That's what we're aiming to do. So we're joined this evening by Poppy Frater, who's a consultant up at SAC Consulting, and Andrea Walker, who is a farmer in the Scottish Borders. Nick and I will do a quick chat, and then we'll ask them to introduce themselves. We've also got Joseph on the line, who is the friendly leprechaun that keeps appearing. I'm sure there's something culturally wrong about that. But anyway, so Joseph is the question I've come very right on. Question master for this evening, as ever. So he'll be monitoring the question and answer section and then interrupting at hopefully appropriate points to ask some questions. And again, thank you to Fiona Lovett of Flock Health for lending us her Zoom for this evening. So Nick, what have you been up to in the last month?
The last month I have, well, you asked me to say a pain and a gain in this little bit. And
I stole that from someone else's
someone else's thing. So briefly, my gain, I've got two gains if I'm allowed. One has been the kids getting back to school, which they are happy about, and I'm even happier. And the other one, I suppose, is grass growth, which is possibly slightly steady, but now we've changed the balance of cows and sheep. I think we're really seeing the benefit of that. All the lambs have gone, the cattle are all in one big mob, and I think we're kind of thinking that we're finally finding our kind of sweet spot, dare I say. The pain was actual pain. So we have chickens in these chicken tractors, and Reno made me go in and get right in there and pass these chickens to him. And then in doing so, I tweaked my back really quite badly, and I've been kind of hobbling around, kind of strutting around in agony for the last 2.5 weeks. And what it's made me realize is that when you're actually in pain, I've never had that much sympathy for people, but when you are in pain, it's pretty miserable. And yeah, so that's my pain, Liz. How about you?
Have you developed any more sympathy or not?
No, not really.
Okay.
No, I'm still quite hard.
Well, my literal pain was I fell down the stairs and bruised the bottom of my foot. Who knew you could do such a thing? But I did. So that was mine. But my actual pain in farming world is that I live in Lincolnshire bit, and so we've just finished harvest, but everything is quite dry, and grass growth is not very happy. And I'm never a big fan of when the nights get a bit darker. And the gain really for me is I've got some really interesting projects coming up from work perspective in the next couple of months. And I suppose I should be excited that the sheep year starts again, but it just feels like it's come too soon. So tops will be going out shortly for me. So that's what I've been up to. So in terms of, obviously we're both farmers and we're both female. So what's your sort of, so my background is I come from a family farm and have grown up with it, but you're similar-ish, but you're now farming in your own right with Reno.
Yeah, so I tried to farm with my dad and I couldn't, and it just wasn't going to end well. I did it for maybe 8 years and it just was a complete clash. And now and he was probably very much thought of as the boss, and my mum, even though she kind of worked outside, she was very much the wife and not the farmer, I suppose. And that kind of model has resulted in 4 very forthright daughters who don't really stand for being treated like that, I suppose. So anyway, so now Reno and I farm together. I do work off the farm, but we're very much a partnership, very similar, I suppose, to Andrea and Charlie, in that we are 50-50. And yeah, I just think it's quite a healthy way to be, really. But then I suppose I'm quite often referred to as the farmer's wife, which you kind of get used to, but when you think about it, it is quite irritating. How about you?
We should start the phrase farmer's husband.
I know. So the kids are called, you're called a farmer's daughter, aren't you? And that farmer is generally thought of as a man. So I think you just get used to it. You get used to it, and it doesn't, I think farmers are not bad for it, but I think maybe allied industries are. Yeah. But how about you?
Yes, a similar-ish story. So I'm still attempting to farm with my father, and it ends up in falling outs quite often. Similarly, he has also bred 3 quite forthright daughters. So it's an interesting similarity, really. But yeah, we're all involved in the farm in some degree, and usually the business name is YP Genever and Daughters. So, and most people do, it's still quite uncommon, to be fair. And part of that was my mum was from a farming family, and when her dad died, she got 0 of the farm. So it all went to her brother. And so from really young, it's always, and I was one of 6 cousins. The farm split through the family split, but anyway, and 5 girls, 1 boy. So like from whenever, it was always equal. Everybody could do everything they wanted to do.
And I
don't think it was anything. It wasn't to do with equality. It was just to do with there was jobs to be done. So,
but I think change is happening, and I think it will happen quite quickly. Yeah. So, in 20 years' time, this conversation probably won't be happening. Let's hope so.
Perhaps we can hope. Okay. So, shall we make a start?
Yeah.
So,
I think we should.
What would you like to do?
Can I introduce Andrea, because she's one of my role models, and we'll be talking about that a bit. So I first met Andrea. I went to a meeting at a farm maybe 3 years ago, and it was with I think it was with the Soil Association. Andrea, you have to correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, there was a consultant there called Andre, I've forgotten his name. He's
Von Barneveld.
Yes, and he was amazing and made everyone cry. And then Andrea stood up and made everyone cry again. And so yeah, they do a tremendous job up there, and they're a proper team and an inspiration, really. So I'm delighted that she's here. Andrea, do you just want to introduce yourself and just say a bit about yourself?
I can give it a go. So I am Andrea Walker. I am part of Team Walker. I farm with my husband, Charlie, and we've got 2 kids, Tom, who's 18, and Jessica, who's 15, who also help out on the farm, except for the fact that Tom has now left us and gone to Glasgow University. You may have seen him actually in Murano Street accommodation. I think they've been on the news. So that's another story. So we farm in the Scottish Borders. We are 1st generation tenants. Charlie does come from a farming background, but his family farm was sold off when he was still at school. So he had no options in that department, so we had nothing to hold us anywhere. So we met at Harper Adams, which was a very good thing. The very first day we went, we were introduced to everybody in our year, and at the end of it, the principal said, I can't remember what the percentage was, a very high percentage of us would have just met our future spouse. And little did we know at that point, but we had indeed met each other. So we met there, and I should say, I do come from a farming background, but my grandparents had a small holding in Cambridgeshire. I come from Cambridgeshire originally, and I spent a lot of time growing up with my grandparents, and my granddad was my massive role model growing up. He was definitely of the belief that girls and boys were equal. Whatever my brother did, I had to do, and vice versa. So he was the only role model I knew that was actually proof that the older generation weren't trying to hold us back. They weren't trying to dumb down girls. He definitely had me at the same level as my brother. So that's a bit of a digression. Charlie and I met at Harper. He worked up here for the neighbouring farm when he was on Sandwich. I came up, did lambings up here, and we both moved up in 1998. We worked for the next door farm. We managed to secure the tenancy to Barnside in 2001. We took it on as a very rundown farm. We had 3 swinging gates, and we have built it up to be a very progressive, I don't know what to say about it really. It's we're sort of pushing the boundaries. We're working hard together to try and make our farm a better place for the future. And yes, we're tenants, but we are absolutely looking to the future and pushing it on like that. I don't know what else.
Yes, no, well, that's good. That's a good start. Back to you, Liz.
And so the connection also with Poppy is that, so we'll introduce, or Poppy can introduce herself in a second, is that you're also the consultant at the Walkers, aren't you, Poppy?
Well, I work with Charlie in terms of, he's part of our sheep group that I run, and he's part of a Farm Acts discussion group that I run, so it's 5. But I wouldn't call myself the consultant. I wouldn't say.
Okay.
That's okay.
There's a connection.
There's a connection, and I take students to Barnside and things like that.
Poppy knows our farm as well as anybody does. She comes on and we may not use her as specifically a consultant, but she definitely acts in that role with the groups that she's in and that Charlie's in, and with the students that come on. You hear it all and you see it all.
That's right. Yeah. Which is great.
And Poppy, how did you find yourself where you are at the moment in terms of the role you do?
Well, I see the start of my career from AHDB, so I started there in 2012. I did an MSc in Agriculture and Environmental Science, and I was very much sort of more environmental focused, I guess. And then learning more about grass and the need to be resource use efficient, I guess, and how grass plays a big part in that kind of angled me in that way. And so I became enthusiastic about pasture management and rotational grazing. And of course that took me to New Zealand for 1.5 years. And then I took up this role at SAC in 2016. And I've been here for 4 years now. So,
most of your work, it's not necessary. So you would do a lot of grazing systems, wouldn't you, rather than necessarily focusing on regenerative type approaches? Yours is mainly grass focused systems. Yeah,
absolutely. So most of the time I'll be advocating for your standard rotational grazing, sort of the 3-leaf stage type, 24, 8 paddocks, 3-week rest, 3-day graze type system. I got into it actually through all grass wintering. That was my big introduction into it when we launched that project back in 2012, 2013, which I found a really nice route in, because all grass wintering was a simple way to kind of understand the principles, and you very quickly saw the results of it. So for those that don't know, sorry, all grass wintering is with sheep, rotational grazing through the winter.
So like the aim is sort of 100-day paddocks, isn't it? So you get your rest period and they're shifting them across.
Yeah.
And then, but you're now taking it to the next in terms of qualification, in terms of doing a PhD.
Yeah.
But that's heading towards regenerative or not really?
It could do. I'm trying to remain unbiased.
She's only 3 weeks in.
It could do.
Bit vague.
Of course. Yeah. Well, so the PhD is entitled, "Is mob grazing beneficial to soil health and the environment?" And it's me trying to understand, how grazing management influences soil carbon sequestration, soil health generally, food security, all the biggies, just saving the world.
one grass leaf at a time.
Yeah.
And we briefly talked, didn't we, about there's been a lot of chat at the minute on Twitter and this week about the Netflix film Kissing the Ground.
Yeah.
And have you seen it?
Yeah, so I watched that on Friday. Sorry, is it going to change the world?
Yeah.
I thought it was really good in countering the other sort of American style documentaries like Cowspiracy and I can't remember the other ones. So in that it brought sort of livestock. I mean, that was just a small part of it, actually. It brought livestock into the picture again as one of the solutions as one of our tools for climate change. It also brought in no-till. It had the likes of Gabe Brown. So I thought it was a really good sort of to give that balance to the argument again. That was valuable.
Thank you. And I suppose it is always this is the start of the question we always try to ask everybody. We always sometimes forget, which is, what does regenerative farming mean to you, Poppy? If someone asks you for a definition and you're in a pub, obviously COVID secure, and someone asks you what you do, how do you define it to people who aren't within the industry?
Yeah. I'm at a bit of a head start to Andrea, actually, because I wrote an article about this for Sheep Beef News last month. So I think...
I don't want a whole article. I want like a 2 sentences, please.
Okay, I've got it.
So do the whole article so I don't...
Okay.
Improving the land that's beneficial for future production, wildlife, and the environment. That's what it means to me. And I think lots of practices fall under this umbrella. We just need to have better understanding of how to quantify the benefits of these practices to be more assertive about how we use these practices. So things like mob grazing, no-till fall under this, and agroforestry. But yeah, in premise, it's just about improving the land in a way that's beneficial.
So Andrea, you're organic, aren't you?
Yes, we are.
And how long have you been organic for?
We went into conversion in 2004, so we've been organic for a long time. I sort of can't remember how to do conventional farming. We've been organic that long. It is a different mindset for us. It's thinking outside the box. It's the fact that you have less of a toolkit than a conventional farmer, because you don't have all of that extra stuff you can fall back on. So you're having to do a lot more planning, a lot more thinking. We work very, very strongly with our vet. We work with people like Poppy. We work with lots and lots of groups. We do a lot of grazing planning, and we work with. We try and work with a lot of different people to get a lot of different new ideas, and then, as always, you have to sort of go through the ideas, discard the ones that don't work for you, and then go forward. It's normally Charlie bringing the ideas home, and I'm going, nah, I'm sorry, no, that's not going to work. That kind of thing. So yeah, from an organic point of view, we're absolutely thinking in that mindset always. It's a fundamental part for us.
And do you think is there organic and then regenerative, or is it all for you one and the same, or do you think you can be not organic and still regenerative? What's your thoughts on that?
You said yes, of course you can. It all sort of dovetails in together. You know, it's all making sure that your farming system is working as a cohesive entity. It's making it all work together. So we do a lot of stewardship, but we don't do anything separately. It's all integrated into the farm. So our stewardship grounds, we've literally just started a new stewardship agreement with the Scottish Government, and we've put in a lot of wildflower meadows, you know, the species-rich grassland, all of these mixed swards. And the reason we went into it sort of quite strongly, because it fits with our system. We're not doing anything that we didn't want to do anyway. We don't subscribe to that box ticking thing just to get the extra points to get in. We actually have to live it and breathe it. It's got to work for you for us on a whole farm level. So I mean, I wrote it down earlier because I'm terrible at remembering numbers. We have 100 acres in species rich now, and we only farm 625. So, but it all fits completely in with the system. So the dates work for lambing on them and then closing them up, and then sort of we retreat onto our grazing platform, and then we can go back onto it so that we can then build grass on the grazing platform ready for the next season. So yeah, it's all
you called, when we spoke earlier, you called Charlie the meeting man.
He is the meeting man, most definitely.
He loves the meeting. But you talk about discussion groups. Just explain how important they've been in your journey, really, and yeah, just how they've worked for you.
So Charlie's been members of lots of groups, so we have the SAC beef group, the SAC sheep group, which Poppy is our main person, which is awesome. And we also, so Charlie goes to those two. I don't go to those. I stay home and do the work. And we're also members, so he is a member of Graze Plus, which is a grazing group that was set up by QMS. They did a 3-year cycle, and then they've gone into the second 3-year cycle. And that is a group, it's a closed group, and it has taken our grazing management to the next level. They all went as a group. They all share everything, including their figures, which is why it's a closed group. And it has been the main driver in our business. That group has been a massive driver to our business. And then on the back of that, Charlie, we got Farmax, which is a big grazing, but Poppy will be able to tell you about that, so, because Charlie's in Poppy's Farmax group, and Farmax has really helped us to know exactly what is going on in our on our great grazing platform, and that has become sort of one of the main drivers of the farm. But that's more Charlie's baby than my baby, to be honest. I can't speak about it very much, which is why Poppy can jump in. But we also go to a mob grazing group, which is a group of such a diverse group. We've got crofters from right up north. We've got people from Orkney, and it's mixed, male, female, very balanced actually. There might even be more females in the group, and that's the one that I always go to, and that's run by the Soil Association as well. And it's an amazing group, and we're looking at tall grass grazing, and that's sort of our thing that we're moving into now. We're sort of on our second year of trialing it with the group, and we're all feeding back and trying to get some actual concrete results so that we can feed back to everybody else.
Yeah, okay.
And in terms of, I'm just interested in those discussion groups that Charlie goes to. Do you obviously appreciate a group because you really like the mob grazing one? Is it just, it's just time commitments, I suppose? You can't both be off, or it's not that you obviously value this group?
I do value the groups. I suppose I'm a bit of a homebod, to be honest. I'm actually reasonably happy to stay at home and do the work. I'm perfectly happy working on my own. Charlie's quite a social soul. He loves getting off farm and going, and he loves absorbing all of the information. He loves chatting with the groups. I suppose they are quite male orientated, but having been to quite a few meetings, I don't find that a problem at all. I've never felt out of it. I've never felt that I couldn't chime in. I never felt anything at all, really. It's purely because we have 2 kids and somebody's got to be at home doing the home run, and that remit falls to me, partly by choice, but yeah, partly because Charlie prefers going out. It's not, he wouldn't ever stop me from going. It's just the fact that I would have to organise somebody to pick the kids up.
So yes, logistics comes into it.
Yeah,
And I suppose
always.
the Zoom, in terms of now, a lot of stuff's gone online, hasn't it? As we can't really meet anymore. Has that helped in terms of that engagement, I suppose? But it's not quite the same.
It has engaged. It has helped, actually. Yeah, I've sort of been in and out of a few more meetings maybe than I would have done normally. Plus the kids are getting a bit older now. Tom's obviously left home, which actually hasn't helped because he was driving Jessica for quite a few places last year. But yeah, I am getting a little bit more free to get off farm nowadays because they're sort of reached that age where they don't need me as much. But even so, I wouldn't choose to go to as many meetings as Charlie does. But I do like actually going to Zoom meetings or just listening in sometimes. And Charlie is more likely to sit and actually go to the meeting, whereas I can dip in and out, and it's a bit easier because it is right here.
I suppose. Sorry.
No, go on, Liz.
I was just interested in Poppy's view because I suppose similar. Well, I suppose myself and Nick as well, but we run quite a lot of discussion groups and events. And do you in terms of mixed audiences, or have you ever had any issue where, because you're a female, probably? Well, I won't answer for
not
you.
knowingly. I wouldn't say. I mean, I've had people be a bit rude to me, but I'm not sure whether that was because I was female or because they didn't like I was promoting rotational grazing. I don't know. So yeah, but like
They just didn't like your face, maybe.
Yeah, maybe, whatever. So it might have been because I was female, or it might have been for any other reason. I don't know. Because I was English, maybe more likely. Yeah. So the types of groups, they're definitely more obviously more male dominated, but we do have a program in Scotland, the Women in Agriculture program. So I actually delivered quite a few talks about grassland management, rotational grazing through this Women in Ag program, and I did notice through that, like, you do get a more range of people speaking out at these events. And when I'd speak to people afterwards, they would say that they appreciated it, that it was, even though we might not always empathize, being more outspoken and strong women, that some people do, still makes it feel like it's a valuable activity.
I think I agree, actually. I think for some women it is important that they actually have a forum where they do feel comfortable speaking out. As I say, I've never been that worried about it. I've worked in agriculture all the way through, and I've never had any issues with sort of males not including me or not encouraging me to speak out, ask questions. I've had amazing bosses over the years, but for some people it's not that easy to actually speak out and put yourself out there. And I think women tend to be a little bit more supportive of each other, just in their manner, maybe. Blokes can be very sort of, I don't know, not just cheeky and joshing with each other and mucking around, whereas some women don't like that. That doesn't bother me particularly, but I can see why there are some ladies who really, really would go to a meeting and go, can't say anything because it's a little bit intense and a little bit intimidating, maybe. I don't know.
Just on the meetings and the kind of school run and how that can kind of just make your day very short. If you've only got a small amount of hours, haven't you, really, to go anywhere?
Yeah, it's true. So my school run, Jessica goes to a school out of catchment, of course, and so my school run is 30 minutes there and 30 minutes back. We do have a lift share, but obviously in Scotland we're actually not meant to be lift sharing at the moment, so my school run has increased. So yeah, I'm an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening, and it does, and it sort of concertinas your day and sort of shoves everything into that 9 till 3 slot, and it's not always easy to put things in your 9 till 3 slot. You have to be pretty concentrated and yeah, lunch sometimes.
And I think so you do the school run, I do the school run, and it's interesting that we do it. Renner will do it if I need him to, but generally I do it, and I also generally cook, as you probably do.
Yes.
So sometimes I do wonder if we maybe do we either not help ourselves, or do we quite enjoy sitting in the car for half an hour and being able to just have some time to do phone calls. I quite enjoy cooking. So you can't have it always, can you, I suppose?
No, you can't. And equally, it's sort of working to your strengths. I'm definitely quicker at cooking a meal, putting a meal on the table. And I am, I'm ashamed to say, I'm probably quicker at driving as well.
But safely, obviously safely.
But within the speed limit at all times, obviously.
Obviously. Yeah.
In some ways, I actually really have valued the school run over the years, because it is a window into your child's life. Because we have a school run, you do have your child encased in your metal box beside you, so they do actually have to interact with you. So that can be quite a lovely time. Equally, if I'm doing something and Charlie's not, he will go, but it's normally my remit, and I don't know why that is. I really genuinely don't.
No, but it's like most women, I don't do much, but most women do most of the housework, don't they? And when Reno hangs some washing up, he says, I've hung some washing up for you. I know. And that does really, really annoy me. Almost swore then. Yeah. But I think it's, go on, Liz.
And it is the infamous the book, or the sort of the terminology, the lean in, which is in this situation, we as females have the responsibility to push back and demand different things. It can't just come to us. And it also I live alone, so it's relatively easy. It's only me that falls out with myself. But it's when my sister goes, well, my husband doesn't do this, this, and this. It's like, well, don't do it, and it's like, well, it'll never get done. So, Jean, there is a tendency of you get the job done as well. There is that element. It's easier just to do it yourself sometimes. Anyway, we have moved into feminist rants now. I promise we would.
Back off.
So we're all in our own separate ways sort of involved in businesses or business owners, and in terms of, and I suppose the bit I'm interested in was particularly when I was at AHDB, in those conversations when we were talking about farmers, what they should and shouldn't be doing. He always was used in those conversations, and there would generally be me in the corner of the room going, or she. So and although it was mildly irritating, I stopped after a while, but it's a very common, we use he a lot. And now I tend to use they, just to try and get myself out of trouble. So what is there, do we all need to make a purpose decision to try that, or do you think it's changing, or do we just not to be, or am I just oversensitive? What do we think?
It stands out when people just say he now. I think it stands out more to me anyway.
Hilariously, Nick did it the other day in a conversation.
Oh, did she?
I do it a lot. So I'm guilty for it.
It genuinely doesn't really bother me. you know, you were talking earlier about the question of is the boss in, dear? And I get that all the time. And I just do the whole, you're looking at her, and they just give me that look, and they're like, oh dear. And they know they've made a boo-boo. And once they've asked that, even if Charlie is in, he won't speak to them. He will make me speak to them. Or no, he will just stand back and let me speak to them unless I ask him to speak to them, because he's just like, oh no, I'm not getting involved in that. No, that's not happening. So it doesn't really bother me to be that the farmer is referred to as he, because it's such a stereotype. All of the books that you read the kids, the farmer is always a man, always. You know, I've just been down to see my toddler niece, and I'd sort of taken a best present ever. It always has to be, for first-time parents, always has to be noisy. So it's got batteries in, and it makes awful singing noises. So I took it down, and of course it is a farmer man. And I'm reading this book to her and going, that is a bit rubbish actually, because yeah, I am the farmer too. And she doesn't know, she lives right down near Stansted, so she doesn't see me that often. So she doesn't know that I also am the farmer. And all of the books she had were of a farmer man. So it is quite ingrained, isn't it?
I think, and it is about, there's an element of us challenging, but and it is when do you get past that point of just being irritating, which I have been in meetings, but I think you have to be happy with being uncomfortable to make things shift.
Yeah.
And I think, and the bit that, sorry, I'm now on a feminist rant, no, just a rant, but the bit I particularly like about the situation I'm in, which is one, like in the morning I can be mentoring a water tank, and in the afternoon I can be discussing knitting. Do you mean I value the range of things that you can achieve, because we can do it all if we wanted to. So I think it is about being proud of what we can do, and that from that we also have to be the ones that say it in a conversation. But I do agree it's quite difficult to get that over that he use. Anyway, I'll shut up. Poppy, what do you think?
You get worn out, don't you?
Someone said it isn't a rant, it's very important, so
yeah,
I feel
thanks,
vindicated.
Jenny, you end up exhausting yourself, don't you? Like there's a great one of my colleagues in the office, Moira, she always challenges it, and I don't know, you just sort of worry about being seen as bitter and tyrant, but we need to. Yeah, you're right. We do need to challenge it all the time.
So, Poppy, when you take students to Andrew and Charlie's, how is that different to other farms you take them to? Is it a different dynamic there, or and how do the students kind of react to that?
Yeah, well, actually, to be honest, it's the only farm I take them to. Oh. Am I too loud?
No, I'm just worried about what you're going to say.
It's great. We take them on a quick, honestly, they have like an hour. We have a whistle-stop tour on the trailer, and then we have this great double act of Charlie and Andrea presenting the farm. And I think it's fantastic because they both sort of bounce off one another, so it's quite funny. But also they get the full rounded impression of how the farm is run, rather than, and I appreciate that because you give up your time, and I appreciate like not all the time is both partners in the farm going to have the time. So you do, give us that morning, and it's important, and you get people coming to you at the end, don't you, Andrea? So what do you do?
What do you do? It's like, well, pretty much everything. I do whatever he does, some of it better, some of it worse, but most of it better, to be honest. Yeah. But yeah, to us, it's only right that we are a team, and we've always sold ourselves as that, and we are absolutely balanced in our business, and we're always very honest and very rude to each other. You were very kind, actually, Poppy. Charlie and I are very rude to each other when we have people coming round. Yeah. And it's really important that we get across the message that it is okay that you have a 50-50 partnership, but equally it's okay to say that there are jobs that one of us does better than the other, and it's not because Charlie's a bloke and I'm not. It's because we have different skills, and you've always got that to bring to a partnership, to a relationship, to anything. You know, the reason we work so well together is because we do have different skills. And for us, it's not the boy-girl divide. It's not anything to do with that. It's just that we're pretty good at a partnership and we work well together. And fortunately for us, we're quite interchangeable in the jobs that we can and like to do.
So where you've set up the farm as well, you've not got like huge amounts of machinery and things like that. You've set it up in a kind of easy managed way, really, haven't you?
That's true. But equally, I can do machinery. I'm actually more machinery minded than Charlie is.
That's true. Sorry.
We're getting a tying ourselves in. No. And I suppose the interesting thing is that, as we were talking about before, is that the perceptions you see when you visit New Zealand farmers or farms is that it tends to be that partnership is better represented than you tend to see in British farms. And that's not saying that the females don't have a role within that farm. They just don't put themselves forward or as the equal partner in that. And it's not about driving tractors, is it? It's about the role they have in bringing income into that farm, whether it is from direct farming or from other things that are linked to that farm or land. So how do you I had to think about it, and I reckon I would struggle to count up to 10 farmers that I know that would be similar in how you in that 50-50 partnership that Andrea and Charlie would have.
In the UK.
So,
would that be a fair representation?
So when you were in New Zealand, Poppy, was it noticeable, the kind of 50-50 partnership?
Yeah, I mean, I noticed it from here when there was a study tour from New Zealand, and they all came together as husband and wife. Actually, they all came as partners when they came across, and they all talked sort of equally as well. There wasn't, one dominating over the other. And then I just thought, but I do think it relates to the more sort of innovative farmers that I think that's part of the strength in the business, as they farm in this management, in this partnership. And then also I was working for a software company, and I think, I think it was shared responsibility in terms of obviously accounts, data entry and stuff like that, but it's only powerful when you both share the strategy, I guess.
And do you think, this is a bit of a random question, but do you think the whole regenerative type movement lends itself to a more balanced male-female kind of balance rather than the more conventional farming?
I don't think it works in that way. I think you tend to find like environmental sciences are more female dominated, and welfare and Fiona was saying earlier, veterinary's becoming more female dominated. I think it's partly that's the reason, whatever the reason is actually, but women seem to have more of an interest in the environmental side of things, environmental sciences, and maybe that's what drives it rather than the other way around.
I'm thinking, Joseph, sorry, go on.
Sorry, I think that our farming system, I love farming. I did a degree in it and it's always been my thing. But since we were farming in our own right and since we went organic, I have to say, doing all of the stewardship options and things, it really interests me. I really like that. And maybe it's kind of a bit of a nurturing thing that, it's more tangible. You're not just farming for producing a certain product. We're about farming for outcomes as well, and it definitely is more up my street than pure production farming. So maybe you're right, maybe it is something to do with the environmental sciences, and just I have a bit more interest in that.
My fascinating fact is that in terms of labour in the EU, 40% of the labour is female. So we compare that. So the bit that interests me in that is that we generally don't have that representation within senior leadership or within the farming partnerships. And some of that, it depends on where they are within that business structure. And it's been picked up as a question, which is if you looked at engineering, it's 9% women. So do you mean from a farming perspective, we have in terms of we have a huge proportion of people in this industry that are women. It's about how do you get them to be, how to want to be or own that position of a farmer. That's what's interesting. Anyway, I skip just, so yeah, my fascinating facts there. But so I think what we learn from that is there's other sectors that have a lot more. They have to push a lot harder than we do to get that our voice is heard, because we are 40% of the workforce and probably responsible for a huge proportion of off-farm income coming into farms. Which, so yeah, it's back to that point. It's wider than just walking beyond that. Or anyway, I'm not. These aren't the questions, are they? They're statements. I apologise for that. So in terms of, and we've sort of talked a bit about women-only groups, and have you had experience of being a member of a women-only group, and has it helped you? Or I know Poppy's talked about she's spoken at some of them, but is it something that would you think is needed more of? Do we need to engage more with that sort of to build confidence and to get people sort of empowered into that?
Who do you want to ask?
Poppy, sorry, it wasn't helpful, was I?
I think, yeah, it's such a fine balance, because we don't want to be seen as excluding a group of people, but at the same time, the role models are important, and an environment where people are encouraged is important. And sometimes, whatever the case may be, you're more comfortable with your own gender. And yeah, so perhaps, I mean, I don't know what's happening in England in that sort of, or other countries in that way, but I think it has worked well in Scotland.
I think it has worked well. Sorry, I've been to a couple of meetings. I spoke at one, and as I said before, I don't feel the need for a women-only group. I'm pretty confident enough that I can make a fool of myself in any gender group. But I do think for some women it is a good forum, but I don't think, I find it really difficult to square it with the fact if we had all men farming groups, that would not be appropriate. I find that really difficult to get in my head, because I think, I don't know, with gender equality, we should all be able to learn together, but it's just finding how to encourage other women that it is okay to speak up in groups. But I don't know the answer to that, because I can only speak for myself, and I don't find it too much of a bother.
I think it's a stopgap in the hope of getting to the point where we don't need them.
Yeah.
Can I bring Joseph in at this point just to see if he has got any questions, Joseph, or comments even from the leprechaun?
I don't have comments. What are you on about? To be fair, there isn't too many questions actually. There is more of a chat going on, I think, between people. There was one question though. I think it was more about women. I think it was when you're having your discussion about is the boss, as in the man at home, but is this a farming only issue? I don't think it'd be fair on farming to say it's just farming. It's probably in many sectors. And then a few comments around that the whole regen concept is holistic, and one major pillar of this is work-life balance, including so you include the whole family. There is one or two comments on role models, but I'll leave that because I know it's coming up in a little bit. So yeah, no, it's more, I think what's more of a discussion at the moment.
Okay, so role models. Andrea, you have a daughter.
I do. I have a very fierce daughter.
Fierce daughter, good. And she's done. I don't know how interested she is in day-to-day farming. Is she keen?
Not so much day-to-day farming. She's interested in she's interested in going on some of the comments. That she's interested in the holistic management style of farming. She likes looking at the big picture. She likes looking, but actually coming out on the farm and physically farming, not so much. So do you want me to say she
well yeah, I just because I'm quite, she sees you standing up talking to groups, talking at conferences, and then I suppose that in turn has kind of given her the kind of confidence to do some of her own stuff, because she did. Can you just explain the QMS thing she did, which was pretty special?
Yeah, she's pretty awesome. She absolutely puts me in shadow. So she's 15 and she made a video all on her own bat, and she entered a competition to meet Sir David Attenborough at a dinner in Edinburgh. And she entered. She didn't win, but she was selected to go to the dinner anyway. And QMS got a hold of her video. It was all about regenerative grazing being part of the solution for global warming and for climate change. And so QMS got a hold of it, and they asked her to go and present it at their big conference up in Glasgow. So Jessica stood up in front of 450 delegates at the QMS conference with the interviewer, and they presented her video and she answered questions. And she's now been selected as a farmer ambassador for the Soil Association. And I don't know whether she'll get on, but she's already spoken to Radio 4 Farming Today, and she never ceases to amaze us. She is amazing.
But she's had you obviously as a role model, so I can do that.
Absolutely. There's a big thing. This girl can, and definitely in our family, it's not this girl can. It's just you can, whatever you want to do. And it's the same for Tom. And we are just absolutely that. If you set your mind to it, whatever you want to do, you can do it. Just go for it. And she absolutely takes that and runs with it. She's been down to Oxford University. And she's only 15. She got selected to go to university. What the heck is that all about? So yeah, it is. I had really strong role models. You know, my mum was a single parent, and she did an amazing job of getting my brother and I up and running. And you know, she had a support team behind her. You know, I come from a strong family, and they encouraged me to be whoever I wanted to be, or whoever that may be. And I'd like to think it's the same for our two. We've never ever tried to make our dream their dream. We're tenants. We don't really have anything to hand on as such. So we've always said we want to farm ourselves to a place where we can help our kids to do whatever they want to do, whether that be farming related or not. I mean, Tom's doing maths and statistics, so I'm pretty sure that he's not going to be wanting to come into farming. But you know, for either of them, it's always about you can. So on you go, do it. And if that's what being a strong role model is, then yeah, we are that.
Yeah, definitely.
And I suppose the question also is for those people who don't have. So I suppose my question is, how is there something that, I know Scotland, you have quite different initiatives to what we have in England, but what happens if that role model isn't there? Do you mean how can we support that next generation coming into farming? So do you mean they could see videos and they could see things on there, but where is that support network, I suppose, for that future female farmer?
Well,
again, this is anybody.
For us, Jessica has nailed it when, as part of her farmer ambassador thing, she wants to be talking to people her age and younger, because in Scotland we have noticed there's a big gap in education for our children. So at primary school they're doing lots of basic farming stuff. They don't get onto farm very regularly because it's quite difficult getting kids on farm. We set up a link with our local school, and they would come on farm. And it was really hard, really hard. The amount of red tape to bring children onto your farm is massive. So, but we did that, and that was really good. But once they get to secondary school, there is just a massive gap, a farming void. And Jessica she's doing geography, and she was talking to her teacher. They did a very basic farming project within geography, and the teacher was stood up telling them something, and Jessica was just like, hang on, that's not right. And so the teacher had learned one thing, and it absolutely wasn't right. And Jessica stuck up for it and said, look, please let me speak, or get my parents in, or get in touch with, we have RET, which is the Royal Highland Educational Trust, and please get them to come out and speak to us so that we actually get the proper story, not whatever this is that you're saying. And so we see there's a massive gap in that education, and we need more people to be role models and go out there and speak to the schools, because until we get that understanding as they're growing up, I don't think that once they've left school, I think it's very difficult to get them back. So we need more people who are prepared to stand up in front of scary teenagers, I think, and actually tell them, farming's not all bad. And it's girls, it's boys, it's everyone. And, there is a place for, if you're interested, there's a place for everyone. We've got a 19-year-old working with us at the moment. He's one of Tom's friends, comes from the town, and he's just loving learning what we're doing. And he's going, I never knew this. I never saw it. So, yeah, I think we've got a big role to play if we can.
And that's not just a gender thing, is it? It's about education of what farming does or doesn't do, or to put a counter argument to some
all
of the
of
beliefs.
us, whatever gender we are, whatever we do, it's about all of us being able to stand up and showing these kids that no matter what gender they are, no matter who they are, there is a role for them in farming if they're interested. Because all you have to be is interested.
There's the perception that, because obviously the big difference is physical strength, and I think that's part of the perception, isn't it, that we're less able to do some of the tasks, I guess. But with technology and everything as well, I don't know.
See, the challenge I have in all of this is I'm 6'1", so that unfortunately never really, and not that infers that I'm strong, but I can't believe that argument, but I appreciate I have a slight different physique than others. I think what's coming up on the, anyway, so let's finish that point. But there's an element of that, but I think also, as Andrea will say possibly, is that you just learn different ways or different techniques.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And my biggest frustration of whoever bloody designed hydraulic pipes, but do you mean you just learn different ways of doing it and just swear at them each time? Some of it is about poor engineering,
yes.
But that it's just poor engineering. Certain hydraulic pipes that are probably not maintained well enough. Anyway, carry on. So yeah, in terms of the physical characteristics, I suppose, or the strength argument, what's your thoughts, Andrea?
Well, I've had some interesting, hydraulic pipes are a bugbear, I will agree. But I don't think that's just because I'm a female. I think, as you say, they're just not ideal. I have seen Charlie beating hydraulic pipes too. It's not just me. So I think that, as my granddad always told me, no matter whether you're male or female, if there's a job to be done, you'll find a way to do it that you can do. So Charlie and I will do the same job on the farm, but we'll do it completely differently. And it's not that either way is right or wrong. It's just that I'll admit it, he is bigger and stronger than me. It's not much taller than me, to be fair, but he is stronger than me. And that's fine. I hold my hands up, and there are jobs that I say, well, I can't do that. I'm sorry. Would you help me, please? And that's okay. And I think for us, or for me anyway, admitting that you need help with some things was a big thing, because when I first went into farming, it was very much about, oh my goodness, I've got to do this. I've got to prove that I can do it, even though I'm a girl. You know, when I was milking dairy cows for a start, and I very much had to prove that I was as good as or better than the blokes I was working with. And I felt that very strongly. Nowadays, I don't let it worry me too much. I know that there are jobs that I do completely differently, and that's fine. You just find your way of doing things. But that's true in any job, surely. It's not peculiar to farming. I hope it's not peculiar to me either.
Liz, I'm just conscious there's quite a lot in the chat, and I just want to make sure I'm just struggling to read it and concentrate. And can't multitask.
It's a lot. I think the point that keeps coming up is that I suppose it's part of it is about, we're talking about from an individual perspective, aren't we? And I suppose it's how do we support a community of other female farmers, which we're sort of starting to touch upon, but and also recognise that I can talk about myself, but I've been in a relatively privileged position, which is I come from a family farm and have an opportunity to farm. So it's, I suppose, how do you support people who aren't in such a privileged situation and maybe don't have that confidence to understand? So some of it is sort of talking about that in terms of how do you move away from us as individuals to how do you support the sort of wider collective, I suppose.
Like, can I change the question a little bit for you, if that's okay, Liz?
I was just summarising the chat.
Why doesn't it make you angry? Why aren't you angry? Why aren't you angry that you're happy with the assumption that men are the boss? So I think
I'm not. It's not my assumption.
No, but just going through the feedback. So there was a lot. You spoke a lot about, you get used to it, or you speak up in meetings if you want to say, and her. But just going through one or two of the comments. Why is it? Are we getting to a stage where you're just accepting it, moving on, or is there an anger? Why isn't there an anger? Not on you as individuals, but just generally, because to change, it can't always be accepted.
In terms of, from my perspective, I don't think I am as angry as I should be, because I don't often recognise some of the situations that other people get themselves in. So I've never generally with farmers had a situation where I have felt lesser because I'm a female in that room. I've had situations of people who used to employ me that paid me less than men. That pissed me off. But in terms of farmers, I've never had a problem. As Nick said, I've had issues with people in allied industries. So I trust me, I can get angry about the situation. But in relation to the job I currently do, I don't think I'm disadvantaged because I'm a female. I think I'm actually advantaged because the conversations I have with farmers is a different relationship because of it. So, but a part of it is probably I need to get out and talk to more people who haven't had such a, I wouldn't say easy ride, but I have also recognised I haven't experienced everything that other people have.
And it's all the underlying things, like you've had to work hard to where you've got to, like, and it's these sort of things that aren't obvious to us, that challenges you've overcome that aren't necessarily obvious and that you maybe haven't quantified, I guess. But we are talking. And
I think it does. And it comes partly, I'm thinking, from the same experience that quite a few of us had, which is it comes from an element of, it does come from childhood. It comes from that place where actually I was never felt to feel different because I was female. And so you then take that into every meeting, which is I have the right to be here. And that's not about stamping your feet. It's just walk into that room. So that is another element of privilege that I've had that others haven't.
I think generally, for 95% of the time, you don't. Well, I don't see it or feel it, but when you do, it can knock you for six a bit. And I suppose that's what I probably need to jump on, but I think things are getting better, slowly, and there's probably certain areas like the allied industries I think are worse than farmers, I'd say, and you only see those people now and again.
I'm in the fortunate position of I say that I haven't sort of really met with too much negativity towards me being a female in agriculture, but I have had experience of that sort of sexism, or is it sexism? I don't know what the right words are for these things, but where you are sort of made to feel as if you should be uncomfortable being there, because actually, do girls really do that job? But that was when I was a lot younger, and I think we are definitely moving into new grounds now, where we are all fighting hard, and we are getting heard more. Surely, the very fact that we've got together, you know, and we're all out there speaking to people, surely that's got to be a big step in the right direction. And you know, Scotland's doing so much with the Women in Ag meetings to encourage people to speak up and get more confidence. I don't know. I feel quite positive about where we're going.
Yeah, but I think it is. Yeah, it is about complacency, isn't it? And that's, do we have to keep? And during what has come back is it's about the fight. And then I don't know whether if any, there's been quite a few sort of various TV programs at the moment in terms about the sort of gender equality in the 1970s. And I looked back at that and went, I've never been on a protest. Why am I not fighting more? And you realise that it has shifted on, but are we actually making enough of a stand? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I asked myself that.
One thing that I spoke to Charlie about this earlier, and one thing he made very clear was he always talks about us and our business and what we are doing. So it's not just me speaking about it, it's the fact that he, as a man, is going to all of these meetings, and for him and for all of the people that know us, it's definitely us who's doing the farming, and he's very clear about that. So if more blokes are happy to share that we inclusive thing, then maybe we will get there sooner than we think. You know, maybe just within our relationships, we need our blokes to be standing up for us as well and putting that message out there. I don't know.
I think more than anything, I think that's where it needs to come, because I think that's where the issue lies. It's with men making the wrong assumptions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Charlie does fly my flag pretty well.
He does. And you both went up and collected your Farmers Weekly Grassland Management Manager of the Year award together.
You were not keeping me off that stage, Poppy.
And so in terms of, to sort of start to think about it, so in terms of what I'm about to go on a protest, I don't know where, but I'm going on a protest. But what else do we need to, what else can we do? Do you mean we have powerful voices on the 4 people on this call? What else do we need to do? And that's to Poppy really, what to start off with, but what do you think as this collective of 4, what could we be doing differently?
That's a really hard question. I think a lot of it is continuing. I think doing what we're doing, continuing to make sure that we're working hard and being competent and what we're advocating, and what, you know, in terms of farmer technical ability. Just continue. Oh, I don't know who that is, but thank you. I think that's more important than anything, is making sure, like, not making a big deal of gender and just being as good as you can be. But then that's part of the problem as well, the fact that we feel we need to work harder. But yeah. That's not a great answer, is it? But I don't know what else to say.
But no, it's about, so it's doing more of the same, isn't it? It's not about, we haven't won the war, not that there's a war to win, but we still feel there is more to sort of give, and I think, as you say, it's not my point about feminist ranked, it turns people off quite quickly, doesn't it? And actually how we're doing it now, which is slow and steady, everyone with us, is a way of doing it, and it is moving in the right direction. There's someone who's already writing a female farmer book. She's written it in the chat, Andrea, you'll be pleased to know.
Yeah, and I do notice Mrs. Boot. Oh, I remember Mrs. Boot. Yeah, I do think that you know, we were talking earlier about Charlie going to the meetings and me staying at home. Well, maybe sort of now the kids are older, maybe I do need to get out there more. Maybe I do need to be providing a bit more of a forum and a bit of a face for women pushing forwards. Maybe, you know, I don't know how the blokes in Charlie's groups are going to feel about me turning up rather than him. Although I noticed Giles was made a comment, so he's already said I should go instead of Charlie. So maybe I'm onto something.
So it's but then again, so that's once you mean provided the opportunities, isn't it? So it's to be out, is to go out and not challenge. Again, I don't know why I keep using the word fighting, challenge, all of that is quite a negative term, but it's again continuing the work you're doing, I suppose, to summarize.
Yeah, just sort of put yourself out there, and again, you're talking about role models. It is about sort of pushing yourself forward a bit more, maybe, because people need to see that we are there and we are working away and we are a massive part of things, and actually they just need to see that. You know, Kate Rowell is amazing QMS because, you know, she is a woman standing up there, and she is sort of shouting out about women getting themselves a voice. But yeah, we just, yeah, I don't know.
But I think also within, so I'm at AHDB, and I think we probably need to work harder to, when we invite people to meetings, it's more of a business invite rather than just assuming, which we
Mr.
probably so it's the to invite the whole business, to the decision makers, both of them, probably both, to the meeting. But also, Andrea, we talked a few days ago about we need to play to our strengths, don't we? We talked about someone asking you about if you sold meat. Can you just explain that story? Because I think that's, we're probably better than men at some things, possibly.
Yeah. So I took my daughter dances, and I do spend a lot of time not only on the school run but on the dancing run. So I had taken her to dancing, and I was talking to some of the mums outside the dance school, and we were chatting about their jobs, my job, and we got around to talking about how we farm, and I was explaining the farming system and the fact we're organic, and this is what we did, and we were doing you know, trialing these grazing systems, and they were really, really interested. But the upshot of the conversation was, where can we buy your meat? And it just brought this whole thing to a head. People and the people who are in charge of doing the shopping, whether that be the wife or the husband or whoever it may be, they're really interested in our farming story. And in some ways, we need to be selling our farming story, not just as a man, as a woman. We need to be selling our farming story, because these women were just like, oh my God, I didn't know this. How did I not know this? Why? Where can I buy it? You know, we don't sell direct at all, but I could point them in the direction of our friends next door. We've got farmers sort of either side of us who do. So I was able to point them in that direction. I said, like, you know, ladies, you need to do a little bit more local homework, and I can help you with that. We can do that. And it was just lovely making that connection, and that goes back to the whole education and schooling thing. Yeah, you know, and I suppose as women, we're maybe because I am doing what I'm doing, maybe because I'm on the school run, because I am doing the ballet run, I do have a little bit more of a forum in order to speak about things on a more basic level. But they were so into it and so interested. So I think maybe it is a good thing that I'm on the school run, because they were able to connect with me on a very, very strong level.
Yeah, I think, as you said before, the farming void, when kids become teenagers, and I guess we've just got that. We could work quite well in that space, couldn't we? I think, with the marketing and stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Liz, what time is it? 12 minutes.
Yeah. No, I'm feeling. I don't know why I'm just feeling. I'm not about to go on a protest of establishment. I feel like we haven't done a job well enough. I don't know why. I feel like we haven't empowered enough people. But maybe it's not our role. But I think we have a role in it, and I'm trying to work out what it is, without declaring ourselves to have a women in agriculture group. I just know from my experience of working with groups of farmers is that the groups work so much better when it's a mixed group of people, and so it's trying wherever possible to get everybody's voices in that room heard. And as the facilitator, it is about trying to bring everybody's voice into that room, isn't it? And but I also accept that some of people don't like that forum, and so how else can we offer opportunities? And I think the Zoom one's an interesting one, because it's a very different way of getting information, but it might help that those people who don't want to go and sit in a room and listen to somebody talk at them. So I'm just intrigued by sort of exploring it further in terms of what we can do to sort of encourage. And I'm just also very conscious of when we started to pull the carbon calling program together, is that we were quite conscious that there was only one female speaker in it. And so it's also, we weren't going to go there, but I'm going there. The recent tweet on Male, Pale and Stale that came out of Farmers Weekly, which wasn't about the individuals that were being berated on Twitter because they happened to be male, pale or stale. It was also the responsibility of the organizer of that session to actually be more responsible about who they were willing to put on that plate, on that stage, with the knowledge of how much conversation there is going on at the moment about inclusivity. So I think we all have a role in that conversation. If we're planning or doing things, is to try and see how we can get voices represented in on those platforms.
I think
anyway.
Poppy's reaction at the beginning when we said that she was the consultant at Barnside, and she was like, "Oh no, I'm not," and then Andrea really rates her. That is such a woman reaction. Because I think it's a thing that women only go for a job if they are overqualified, whereas a man thinks, I can wing this, possibly. And yeah, so we I suppose need to be more confident, don't we, in our abilities. Wouldn't you agree, Andrea, that Poppy is important at Barnside?
Absolutely, Poppy is important at Barnside.
Leading question.
No, she's rubbish.
There she goes again.
We're very lucky at Barnside, actually. So we work with Farmstock Scotland, and the lovely person who comes out to draw our lambs for us is also a girl. So Vicky and I have a really, really good, strong relationship. And actually, Farmstock Scotland have loads of girls as their agents now who go out on farm selecting, and lots of lovely young girls coming through. And it's very interesting when Vicky first came to draw our lambs, she was following on from the most amazing guy, and he took her out with him and introduced her to everybody. And she's going up onto health farms and with all of these sort of amazing old characters. And when she first went, they were like, oh, but she is so good at what she does. And I'm guessing that she's sort of charmed all of them, but it's absolutely brilliant because she also is out there. She doesn't make any it doesn't make any difference to her that she is a woman going out onto these farms, and it doesn't make any difference to any of us anymore. She's just Vicky, and so we need more women who are prepared to just put themselves out there, I suppose, and be ambassadors for women in farming and agriculture. And what we're doing is not, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, I've got a bit lost, but it's important that us women do just go and do what we're good at, no matter what the job is.
And and so everybody has that. We all have to take some responsibility to go out and advocate for ourselves and others. Yeah,
definitely.
But you're right. Like a lot of the allied industries are becoming more female dominated. Somebody wrote in the comments, sales. A lot of farmers' daughters are going into sales, but that's a consequence. Well, I think it's a consequence of them not seeing farming itself as their viable career route, or they're not getting the opportunity to.
Yeah, and I suppose, and well, in terms of, I suppose, Poppy, because are you the youngest of 6, aren't you? 5 brothers.
Yeah, I've got 5 older brothers, and I've got a younger sister as well. So, male-dominated households. But it was a tendency. It could only have supported one person, and I don't know whether I would have taken up the reins anyway. But it was never, unfortunately, it was never an option either way.
And I think that comment, it came up when we were talking about the New Zealand partnerships. It's to do with sort of they tend to not be sort of inherited. Do you mean it is about it's about a business that's been established with 2 people as the equal shareholders, which I suppose is similar-ish into the Charlie Andrea situation, isn't it? It may have been a different circumstance with family farms involved, and gets more complex as more family members get involved as well, I suppose.
So it comes back to opportunities for new entrants in itself, I guess.
Yeah. And I think, and it also come up in the chat, which actually shepherding is quite a common route in for females to come into the sheep industry. And certainly, in the sheep sector, most of the consultants that I would have looked up to for however long are all been female. So do you mean there's differences also within the sectors? And I know there's also a conversation there about sort of, I think there's probably a lot more work needing to be done in getting fair representation within the arable side than probably livestock.
Yeah, I used to milk for a living, but before that, when I was at college, I did every job. So I worked on big arable estates, and I've done plenty of tractor driving. But yeah, our route in, as new entrants, that's really difficult, and that's when it was so important that we were a team, because we were working towards this sort of big prize at the end, and it was the pair of us working our socks off to achieve that ultimate goal. So yeah, your teamwork starts right at the beginning, and we were very fortunate that we got the tenancy when we did. But even if we hadn't have got this one, we would have still kept working to get something else. And for us, it was always about a 50-50 partnership, right from day one. So I guess I never thought about it in any other way.
Because it does put the power on, potentially, on the person that's inherited the farm, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If it's not that way.
Yeah, absolutely. If Charlie's parents hadn't have sold their farm, then it would have been very different, I'm sure. Far more arguments.
Yeah. Although we've developed a brand called 3 Daughters. We are playing to the story that it's quite unique for 3 daughters to be involved in a farming business. So that's what we're up to at home. Anyway, I've been random this evening, I do apologise. But to summarise it, I would like, from what everybody on the call, I'll do mine first, then I'll shut up. What is the key point you've taken from this evening's conversation? So for me, it's I need to have a think. There's an idea amongst it, and I haven't quite worked out what I need to do, but I know I need to do something in this arena. Nick.
Well, I was going to pass mine to for a second because I haven't got it yet, to Joseph, who wanted to give his opinion. Joseph?
Nicola, remind me never to text you, Anton.
Oh, sorry. Well, sorry.
Your ability to paraphrase is second to none.
Well, honesty is always best.
If the leprechaun in this outfit is allowed to have an opinion, I'm just going to say it's great because I can sit back and I have no responsibility. You've just let men off the hook completely.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything. Well, sorry, Liz, I'm speaking. Watch the.
Watch the mouth. It's not moving. You're not speaking.
A lot of the actions were about what ye as women have to do, not about what men. It was mentioned once. So again, and also what I find interesting, it's always about women having to speak up. There's plenty of people in life who don't want to speak up, but they shouldn't be discriminated against because of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I find interesting. I'm technically off the hook at the moment, but luckily I'm woke, so it's fine. The other thing is biases. So a random example, most architecture is designed by men, hence why men don't queue to the toilet and women do. But you accept the bias. Why do you talk about farm machinery, for example, and accept it's designed to suit most men? So
we didn't, if you noticed, we did deal with that at the time.
One back, Liz. But I just think what's interesting to me is I don't think it's necessarily about feminism, if that makes sense. I just see it as equality. It just needs to be equal. But I just thought what I found was an interesting comment. Most responsibility was placed back on the people who suffer the inequality rather than the people who actually do it. So that's all. And the leprechaun is out now. Goodbye.
Bye. I'm thinking we've still got a long way to go. I think we, as women, we need to work to our strengths. And I guess when I spoke to Reno about this before the call, he was like, well, he was quite oblivious to any problem. And I think that's possibly where we need to tackle it. And when it comes up, we need to call it out, because I think they're oblivious. On Twitter, I am at Renison, and everyone assumes I'm a man. So I think it's, we need to call it out and be on it. And I think we need to play to our strengths as well.
Poppy?
Yeah, I mean, Joseph's right. We do need to, it's hard. We're being on this side of it, it's harder to defend yourself. We all probably feel uncomfortable on this call today because it's not where we're just like doing a standard technical meeting. We're coming from the side of almost worrying about that fine line between complaining and tiptoeing around, as I've just seen somebody come in here, but actually standing up for ourselves and working for the rest of our gender, which is what we ultimately all want to do. So yeah, if the men on this call can stand up for us as well and add to that voice, that would be really valuable.
Well, as I said earlier, I think Charlie is my biggest cheerleader. So I'm quite fortunate that I do have a voice at the meetings, even if I don't choose to go. But yeah, we need to all stand up for each other, all sort of promote each other, whether that be our partners promoting us or us promoting our partners or us women promoting each other. We all just need to push each other to be the best that we can be, whatever that is and whoever we are.
And then we're going to crowdfund the book that we've heard about this evening. Anyway, I continue my random thoughts. But thank you. It's been, I know, and I agree that I haven't been in a comfortable position for most of the evening, and I don't know why. So I think the more we talk about it, the more, and I appreciate how we've spoken about things as potentially upset people on the call, but part of it is that we have to keep talking about it, doesn't it, until it starts to be slightly less awkward, or we don't stumble around what words we can and can't use, which is, I think, part of certainly some of my issue. So I don't want who am I going to offend next?
In our defence, Liz, we have set this up. We have got Joseph's help. Slightly annoying sometimes, but we have got his help, and yeah, we're doing this, aren't we? So.
Yeah, and as we're saying, which is because we haven't been perfect, we beat ourselves up about it, and actually we've moved a conversation on, and is good enough. We didn't need to solve we were never going to solve it tonight, but we've moved it on a bit, hopefully. But
huge thanks to Andrea and Poppy for our uncomfortable night, and it has set us off, and Liz is going to do a crowdfunding.
Someone's already contributing. It's fine.
Ah, perfect. Yeah, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry I made somebody leave the room.
I know. And we shouldn't apologise. She should have engaged anyway. Now I'm accusing her of leaving anyway. But I think it's the part we don't. Leaving hasn't necessarily helped us, apart from it's made us feel bad. We need to now understand what, in her opinion, what we should have done differently, because that's what then helps the next conversation. Sorry.
She can get back to us, can't she?
She
that
can.
would be really interesting.
Yes, right. As ever, thank you very much. This has been recorded. I might delete it on purpose. But anyway, no, I will not.
So you won't.
And it will be on YouTube, hopefully by the end of the week, and it will also be on a podcast shortly, and that will be circulated via Twitter when they're both available. The next one is generally in a month's time. We haven't decided the date yet, and the subjects are either going to be one potentially on dairy farmer and how can dairy farming be regenerative, or potentially can we do regenerative without livestock. So we're just still working on those two subjects, but one will either be next month and the next, so both of them subjects will be coming up anyway. We just haven't decided which one is next yet, but when we do, we'll let you know. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.